Daikatana is universally known as one of the biggest failures in gaming history. Known as John Romero's love child, it was hyped for having companions with you, as well as providing a wealth of content. So is this game as bad as everyone makes it out to be? The short answer is no, but the real question is if it's worth your time. Either way, it's time to dive in the world of Daikatana and suck it down. We'll be focusing on the single player portion since nobody really plays this game online anymore. Heck, I don't think anyone played online at all, but who cares? The game starts out with a very lengthy and boring introduction sequence on the world and what we need to know. You are Hiro Miramoto, an ordinary swordsman being given the task of hunting down the legendary Daikatana, a sword that gives the power to travel through time. You also need to defeat Kage Mishima and restore balance to the world. I'll get more into the story later, but now it's on to the gameplay. The game is divided up into 4 episodes, each featuring its own weapons and level design. You start off in future Kyoto, move on to ancient Greece, travel to the dark ages of Norway, and end up in the near future of San Fran. Big Sword makes one of the worst first impressions in video game history. To put it bluntly, everything about this episode sucks. The weapons are hard to control, the level design is a complete mess, and the enemies are garbage. Fighting mechanical frogs is not something I was looking forward to do. The first episode seems to have way too many death traps that you need to walk into in order to progress through the game, and since these weapons suck, it makes the game much harder than it needs to be. While these weapons are unique and differ themselves from regular firearms, they still suck. One of my least favorite guns in the first episode is the Ion Blaster, which reflects off the walls. Problem is, 90% of the time it hits a wall, it'll hit you. Here's another annoying ass gun. You've seen me use this one, and it's basically a shotgun that shoots 6 times. It is powerful as hell without a doubt, but it is extremely hard to aim since the recoil moves you backwards. The first episode doesn't have too many pickups, instead opting for these health stations. You'll definitely need to run back to these since health packs are too far and few in between. The game starts to get better during the second episode since the weapons change and you are by yourself again, for a little while. Your goal here is to regroup with your companions. The level design is also much more varied and there are much more things to explore. It still has that maze-like design, but it is much more cohesive this time around. You get to also use the Daikatana for the first time, and it's a bit disappointing. To begin with, calling it a Daikatana is stupid since it isn't really that big of a sword. Second, even though you can level up and get faster and stronger with your attacks, you can't do anything special with it. How cool would it have been if you could slow down time, shoot a wave out of your sword, or even go back in time before this game was made to let John Romero know about his unavoidable future? Sadly, you find your companions again and the problems ensue. The least annoying problem is how they need to be right next to you in order to progress to the next area of the level. The AI pathfinding is a complete joke. I currently have way too much footage of them getting stuck for no reason or falling off of an edge. I can easily make a montage of this. I might do that one day. Episode 2 is pretty good, but I found it to be a bit too easy. Most of the enemies don't have ranged weapons and are slow, so it was easy to whack them away with the discus or slice them up with the Daikatana. The third episode I really liked, and it's easily my favorite in the game. It has this RPG vibe about it, with loot being able to be found in barrels, chests, and many more pickups than the previous episodes. It has a lot of open levels that give it a bit of an open world vibe. The weapons work well and are interesting. One of them involves a staff where you shoot fireballs out of it. Another staff summons a demon to destroy your enemies, and they all feel very satisfying to use. This episode features the most bosses out of all the levels, and honestly, the bosses in this game suck. They are all defeated by circle strafing and continuing the fire. They take only a bit more damage than the regular enemies, so take your best weapon, aim, and fire. One last comment about this episode is how it has a Quake 1 vibe to it. Walking through the dungeons and depths of the time period really gives off the gothic tone the original Quake had. I'm not too sure if this was intentional or not, seeing this ran on the Quake 2 engine, but it was something pretty cool. The last and final episode involves the near future. You start off at Alcatraz and work your way to breaking out. The weapons in this game instantly reminded me of Chaser, and how the weapons in that game were slight future variations of current weapons. Even though these are probably the least creative weapons out of the bunch, they are easily the most comfortable to use because of that. These weapons are very impactful, as we all come to expect, with one futuristic ice weapon. That of course sucks since it bounces off walls. The level design in this episode is pretty well done and creative. The episode is overall good, but is probably the second most frustrating. Your companions seem to be really confused since this has a bunch of elevators, which the AI is too brain dead to be able to know how to use. The game started to crash way too often, forcing me to have to load earlier saves. And that's another huge complaint with me. The game has way too many glitches. There are little ones like your gun not showing up and other graphical glitches, but then there's ones that are really game breaking, such as when it crashes. It seems to happen a lot when moving to another part of the level. Now let's move on to the story. I thought the narrative was going to be bad, but it was actually good. You really see your main character grow as he goes from someone who is just kind of walking through the motions to someone who really feels the responsibility of Daikatana and what must be done to fix the world. Minus a few plot and character moments, it was pretty interesting. Every episode featured its own dilemma, which applied to the grand scheme of the universe and toppling Mishima. The ending is also pretty memorable and really stuck with me. The only main gripe with the story is how many of the conflicts in each episode is solved through a fetch quest. Go find the antidote here and bring it there. Collect the pieces of the purifier and give it to the king. Take me to your leader so all your base are belong to us. It didn't bother me at first, but began to get tedious towards the end. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Some other things I haven't mentioned is how the engine was pretty outdated during its release. The music isn't really all that memorable minus a few tracks, and the RPG system, which really became an afterthought for me. There was also some save gems that limited your saves, but it's best just to disable them. Daikatana has many flaws and is a huge far cry to the masterpiece John Romero promised us. However, I will give Daikatana a slight recommendation. The first episode is terrible, as well as the companions. However, it really feels like a better crew was designing the later levels. The game is an interesting curiosity, and was one of the first in the FPS genre to feature a decent narrative with decent voice acting. It's not completely terrible, but I wouldn't recommend for you to actively seek this out. When it's on sale on goodoldgames.com, get it. It'll be worth the few bucks you'll pay for it. So that was my review of Daikatana. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. On the left is my review of Chaser. On the right is the review of the disaster known as Might and Magic 9. And trust me, I don't like that game. Watch that review. Also, I'm working on you guys' suggestions. I just need a little bit of time. This is Pow3rh0use signing off.